In the dawn of the second millennium before Christ, as the mists rose from the stony hills and valleys of ancient Greece, a new power was awakening. They called themselves the sons of Perseus, the blood of heroes, the Mycenaeans. But were they mere mortals, or the last echoes of a world forged by gods and giants? Tonight, we unlock the gates of Mycenae, the empire of golden masks, cyclopean walls, and secrets that still haunt the ruins of history. Imagine a land where every horizon is broken by mountains, where the wind whistles through olive groves and the sea shimmers with the promise of trade and conquest. Here, the first great kings of Greece would rise, not in the shadow of Egypt or Babylon, but with their own vision of glory. The Mycenaeans were warriors, builders, and storytellers, their legacy immortalized in epic poems and silent stone. Their power began with the building of fortresses unlike anything the world had seen. Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos. Names that would echo across the ages. Each city crowned a hill, surrounded by walls so massive that later Greeks believed only giants, cyclopes, could have set the stones in place. Even today, visitors marvel at the Lion Gate of Mycenae, its monolithic lintel guarded by twin beasts, symbols of royal authority and divine protection. What secrets did these walls once enclose? What rituals, what betrayals, what treasures still slumber in the earth beneath our feet? The rulers of these cities claimed descent from gods and demigods. The most famous of all, Agamemnon, Lord of Men, whose golden death mask stared out from a royal tomb discovered millennia later. But Agamemnon was not alone. The house of Atreus, cursed and glorious, produced heroes and villains in equal measure. Their feuds and alliances would set the stage for the most legendary war of the ancient world, the Siege of Troy. But before the fires of Ilium, the Mycenaeans built their empire on blood, bronze, and cunning. Their warriors were feared throughout the Aegean, armed with long swords, tower shields, and crested helmets. They fought in close ranks, their discipline unmatched. The chariot, an innovation borrowed and perfected, gave their armies speed and shock on the battlefield. In every campaign, they sought not just golden slaves, but glory, the favor of gods who watched from Mount Olympus, ever ready to punish pride or reward courage. Yet, the Mycenaeans were more than mere conquerors. They were sailors, merchants, and diplomats, weaving a web of alliances and rivalries that stretched from Crete to Asia Minor, from the Nile to the coasts of Italy. Their palaces were centers of both war and administration, filled with storerooms brimming with oil, wine, and grain, and archives written in the enigmatic linear B script. The decipherment of these tablets, only in the 20th century, revealed a world surprisingly complex. Lists of tribute, offerings to gods, inventories of armor and chariots, and records of distant embassies. But some tablets speak in riddles, cataloging gifts for the house of the god under the earth, or sacrifices for the day of the black sun. Are these mere rituals, or encoded memories of disaster and prophecy? Beneath the grandeur, darkness lurked. The Mycenaean kings ruled by force and fear as much as by law. The royal courts were hotbeds of intrigue, where assassinations and betrayals were as common as banquets and sacrifices. The legends later told by Homer, the murder of Agamemnon, the madness of Ajax, the doomed love of Achilles and Patroclus, find their seeds in the blood-soaked soil of these palaces. Not even the gods were immune to the ambitions of these kings. The Mycenaeans adopted and adapted the divine pantheon of their Minoan neighbors, but added their own flavor of violence and fate. Zeus, Hera, Athena, and Poseidon loomed large in their prayers, but so too did shadowy figures now lost to myth. The mistress of the labyrinth, the earth shaker, the lord of horses. In shrines carved from rock and painted with strange symbols, priests and priestesses sought to divine the will of these capricious powers. Sacrifice, animal, and perhaps at times human, was the price for victory or peace. Curiosities abound in the archaeological record. In one tomb, gold death masks gleam beside bronze swords and delicate jewelry, as if the dead were prepared for both battle and banquet in the afterlife. Strange frescoes depict processions of warriors, women in elaborate robes, and chariots racing beneath star-filled skies. Some images hint at rituals now forgotten. A king pouring libations into a pit, a masked figure dancing before a burning altar, a child offered up to placate the wrath of unseen forces. What compelled these people to such extremes? Was it faith, fear, or the iron logic of survival in a world where the strong devoured the weak? The Mycenaeans did not exist in isolation. Their fortunes rose and fell with every shift of power in the ancient world. The fall of Minoan Crete, perhaps hastened by cataclysm and invasion, opened new opportunities and dangers. Mycenaean fleets sailed to conquer, trade, and plunder. Their warriors became mercenaries in foreign wars. Their craftsmen supplied weapons and luxury goods to distant courts. The Mycenaeans learned from every enemy, adapting tactics, technologies, and even gods. In turn, they left their mark across the Mediterranean, their pottery and symbols found as far as Spain and the Levant. But with every expansion came new rivals and new threats. The world of the Mycenaeans was not just one of war and wealth, but of prophecy, curse, and doom. Tales told by fireside warned of houses cursed by the gods, of kings who defied fate, of heroes who won glory only to lose everything. The house of Atreus, the sons of Perseus, the doomed daughters of Tantalus, all would play their parts in the coming storm. Even as the palaces glittered with gold and echoed with victory songs, shadows lengthened. Oracles whispered of disaster, and the poets hinted that every triumph bore the seed of future tragedy. As we peer into the ruins of Mycenae today, we see more than stone and gold. We see the ghost of a people who dared to dream of immortality, who built their world on courage and cunning, and who, in the end, became the legends they left behind. Their story is one of conquest and creation, of mystery and myth, of a civilization that shaped the very foundations of Western memory. But the greatest tales are yet to come. In the next chapter, we will follow the Mycenaean kings as they march toward destiny, toward the war that will echo through eternity, the siege of an immortal city, and the unraveling of an age. Stay with us, as the journey into the heart of the Mycenaean enigma is just beginning. As the golden light of the Aegean sun falls upon the battered stones of Mycenae, time itself seems to slow. Shadows lengthen across the Lion Gate, and the old stories awaken. For in these lands, every stone and every whisper in the wind remembers an age when men struggled to become legends, and legends sometimes walked among men. The Mycenaean world was a tapestry of ambition and anxiety, woven from conquest and prophecy. Each city, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, Thebes, was a fortress unto itself, ruled by kings whose power was measured in bronze and blood. But beneath the grandeur, there pulsed a constant sense of uncertainty. The Mycenaeans lived with one eye on their rivals and another on the omens of the gods. They believed the favor of the divine was as fickle as fate itself. A single misstep, a failed sacrifice, could tip the balance from glory to ruin. This atmosphere bred a culture obsessed with war and honor. Boys were raised with tales of Perseus and Heracles, of heroes who had slain monsters and outwitted the gods. In the training grounds of the palaces, young warriors learned to wield the long, leaf-shaped sword and the massive figure-eight shield. Their armor was a patchwork of boars' tusk helmets, bronze greaves, and breastplates hammered with images of lions, griffins, and spiral symbols whose meaning is still debated by historians. The Mycenaeans' greatest strength was their adaptability. They borrowed the secrets of chariot warfare from the Hittites and Egyptians, refining the craft until their own chariots raced like thunder across the fields. They learned siegecraft from the Minoans, building ramps and battering rams to break the walls of rival cities. Their navy, though smaller than that of later Greeks, was fierce and cunning, known for lightning raids on islands and coastal settlements. But it was in their palaces that the true power of the Mycenaean kings was made manifest. These architectural marvels were both military strongholds and centers of administration, religion, and wealth. Storerooms overflowed with imported goods: amber from the north, ivory from Africa, lapis lazuli from the east, proof of a vast web of trade and tribute. The archives, written in the cryptic Linear B, recorded not only shipments of grain and oil, but also lists of weapons, armor, and chariots set aside for war or for gifts to the gods. Many secrets remain hidden in these tablets. Some speak of forbidden rituals conducted in the dead of night, of warriors who do not sleep, and gifts for the lords of the earth. Others allude to prophecies of darkness gathering, of foreign ships on the horizon, of a great king who will bring fire and tears to 100 cities. Were these just poetic flourishes or veiled warnings of real threats? The Mycenaeans' mastery of war was matched only by their mastery of myth. Every clan claimed descent from a divine ancestor: the house of Atreus from Zeus himself, the rulers of Thebes from Cadmus, the dragon slayer, the lords of Pylos from the wise Nestor, said to have counseled gods and men alike. These lineages were more than stories. They were political weapons, used to justify power, inspire armies, and terrify rivals. But the shadow of doom was never far. In the epic tales later sung by Homer, the curse of the house of Atreus is a central theme, a cycle of blood, vengeance, and madness that haunts every generation. The murder of Thyestes' children, the cannibal feast, the sacrifice of Iphigenia, the betrayal and murder of Agamemnon by his own wife. Each act, each crime, seemed to feed a prophecy that no Mycenaean king could escape his fate. Yet, even as doom gathered, the Mycenaeans continued to push outward. Their warriors became mercenaries and conquerors, carving out colonies and strongholds across the Mediterranean. They fought not only for gold or glory, but for the chance to write their names in the tapestry of myth. In Cyprus, Sicily, and the Levant, their pottery and weapons have been found, evidence of a restless, questing people who saw the world as both a prize and a threat. The archaeological record suggests that Mycenaeans were both feared and respected by their neighbors. The powerful Hittite empire referred to them as a Hiowa, a kingdom to be bargained with, sometimes fought but never ignored. Egyptian records mention Danaans and Achaeans as allies, mercenaries, or enemies, depending on the shifting winds of diplomacy. In the ruins of Troy itself, layers of fire and destruction hint at wars whose names are now lost, but whose impact was felt from Anatolia to the distant isles. Amid all this, the Mycenaeans developed a culture of epic storytelling. Poets and bards recited tales of gods intervening in mortal affairs, of heroes who challenged fate, and of cities besieged for 10 long years. These stories were more than entertainment. They were instruction, warning, and hope. They shaped the values of the elite and the dreams of the commoners. They whispered that nothing was impossible for those favored by the gods, but that pride would always invite disaster. One of the most mysterious aspects of Mycenaean life was their relationship with death and the afterlife. Their tombs, especially the beehive-shaped tholoi, were built on a monumental scale, rivaling the pyramids of Egypt in ambition, if not in size. Within these tombs, kings and nobles were laid to rest with treasures fit for gods. Gold masks, inlaid swords, cups, and diadems and offerings for a journey beyond this world. Some graves contain weapons arranged as if for battle. Others display ritual objects whose function is unclear. Miniature chariots, strange figurines, or tablets inscribed with prayers to unknown deities. Many of these artifacts suggest that the Mycenaeans believed the boundary between life and death was thin, and that the spirits of the dead could influence the world of the living. Some rituals may have involved ancestor worship or attempts to appease restless ghosts. There are even hints, still debated by scholars, of human sacrifice, performed to avert disaster or ensure victory in war. But above all, the Mycenaeans were defined by their relentless pursuit of greatness. No challenge was too daunting, no rival too strong. Their kings dreamed of empire, of founding dynasties that would endure forever. Their warriors sought immortality on the battlefield, their names preserved in song and stone. Their builders and artists left works that still awe the modern world. Yet, as their power grew, so did the forces arrayed against them. Earthquakes shook the land, toppling walls and temples. Famine and plague stalked the countryside. Rival kingdoms and rebellious vassals waited for any sign of weakness. And always on the horizon loomed the ultimate test, the gathering storm that would become the Trojan War. In the years leading up to that fateful conflict, omens abounded. Oracles spoke of a war to end all wars, of a woman whose beauty would break kingdoms, of a fleet so vast it would blot out the sun. Kings jockeyed for power, forging alliances and plotting betrayals. The gods themselves seemed to take sides, sending dreams, signs, and disasters to shape the course of fate. It is here, in the tension between destiny and desire, that the Mycenaeans truly entered legend. The story of Helen and Paris, of Agamemnon and Achilles, of Troy and its doom, is more than a tale of war. It is a reflection of the hopes, fears, and ambitions of an entire civilization. As the curtain falls on this first act, the stage is set for the greatest conflict the ancient world would ever know. The warriors of Mycenae stand ready, their armor gleaming, their hearts full of pride and foreboding. The poets prepare their lyres, and the gods watch from their high thrones, eager to see which mortals will rise to glory and which will fall to ruin. In the next video, we march with the kings and heroes of Greece as they set sail for Troy, driven by fate, prophecy, and the unquenchable thirst for immortality. The age of Mycenae is at its zenith, but the seeds of its destruction have already been sown. The journey into myth and history has only just begun. Stay with us as we follow the trail of blood and legend toward the burning walls of Troy.